I see that mind of yours, how it keeps turning long after the lights go out, replaying the day, rehearsing tomorrow, refusing the rest your body craves. I know the heavy ache of that sleeplessness. So let me say this quietly, you do not have to fall asleep. You only have to stay with me. There is no pressure here, no test to pass. Just let yourself be held by the sound of my voice and follow the thread of an old, familiar tale. I will walk with you through every scene, every step, until the weight of the day loosens its grip. You are not alone in this night. Lie back now and let the day slip away from your shoulders. Breathe slowly, in and out, and trust that I will guide you. Settle into this quiet hour, where an old, gentle tale awaits to carry you softly toward rest. It was a yellow August afternoon, and all the world drowsed in the heat. Marilla glanced at the clock and then out into the sunshine, and then she called, in that brisk way of hers, for Anne to come in from her play. Anne had stayed longer than she was allowed, playing with Diana, and now she was perched out on the woodpile talking to Matthew, 19 to the dozen, when she knew perfectly well she ought to be at her work. Marilla said to herself that Matthew was listening to her like a perfect ninny, that she had never seen such an infatuated man, and that the more Anne talked, and the odder the things she said, the more delighted he was evidently. So she tapped sharply on the west window and called out, "Anne Shirley, you come right in here this minute, do you hear me?" And Anne came flying in from the yard, her eyes shining, her cheeks faintly flushed with pink, and her unbraided hair streaming behind her in a torrent of brightness. She was breathless with news. "Oh, Marilla," she exclaimed, "there's going to be a Sunday school picnic next week, in Mr. Harmon Andrews' field, right near the Lake of Shining Waters. And Mrs. Superintendent Bell and Mrs. Rachel Lynde are going to make ice cream. Think of it, Marilla, ice cream. And, oh, Marilla, can I go to it?" But Marilla only said, "Just look at the clock, if you please, Anne. What time did I tell you to come in?" 2:00, but isn't it splendid about the picnic, Marilla? Please, can I go? Oh, I've never been to a picnic. I've dreamed of picnics, but I've never. Yes, I told you to come at 2:00, and it's 2:45. I'd like to know why you didn't obey me, Anne. And Anne answered, in that honest, eager way of hers, that she meant to come in as much as could be, but that Idlewild was so fascinating, and that she had to tell Matthew about the picnic, because Matthew was such a sympathetic listener. Then she asked again, "Please, can I go?" Marilla told her she would have to learn to resist the fascination of idle whatever you call it, and that when she said a certain time, she meant that time and not half an hour later, and that she needn't stop to discourse with sympathetic listeners on her way. But as for the picnic, of course she could go. She was a Sunday school scholar, and it was not likely Marilla would refuse to let her go when all the other little girls were going. But then Anne faltered and told her the trouble. Diana said everybody must take a basket of things to eat, and Anne couldn't cook. And she didn't mind going to a picnic without puffed sleeves so much, but she would feel terribly humiliated if she had to go without a basket. It had been preying on her mind ever since Diana told her. "Well, it needn't prey any longer," said Marilla. "I'll bake you a basket." And Anne, getting through with her O's, cast herself into Marilla's arms and rapturously kissed her sallow cheek. It was the first time in her whole life that childish lips had voluntarily touched Marilla's face, and again that sudden sensation of startling sweetness thrilled her. She was secretly vastly pleased at Anne's impulsive caress, which was probably the reason why she said brusquely, There, never mind your kissing nonsense. I'd sooner see you doing strictly as you're told. As for cooking, I mean to begin giving you lessons in that some of these days. But you're so feather-brained, "Anne, I've been waiting to see if you'd sober down a little and learn to be steady before I begin. You've got to keep your wits about you in cooking and not stop in the middle of things to let your thoughts rove all over creation. Now, get out your patchwork and have your square done before tea time." Anne said she did not like patchwork, hunting out her work basket and sitting down before a little heap of red and white diamonds with a sigh. She said she thought some kinds of sewing would be nice, but there was no scope for imagination in patchwork. It was just one little seam after another, and you never seemed to be getting anywhere. But of course, she would rather be Anne of Green Gables sewing patchwork than Anne of any other place with nothing to do but play. She wished time went as quick sewing patches as it did when she was playing with Diana, though. Oh, they did have such elegant times, Marilla. She had to furnish most of the imagination, but she was well able to do that. Diana was simply perfect in every other way. And then she told Marilla all about the little piece of land across the brook that ran up between their farm and Mr. Barry's. It belonged to Mr. William Bell, and right in the corner there was a little ring of white birch trees, the most romantic spot. Diana and Anne had their playhouse there. They called it Idlewild. Wasn't that a poetical name? She assured Marilla it took her some time to think it out. She stayed awake nearly a whole night before she invented it. Then, just as she was dropping off to sleep, it came like an inspiration. Diana was enraptured when she heard it. They had the house fixed up elegantly. They had great big stones, all covered with moss, for seats, and boards from tree to tree for shelves, and all their dishes on them. Of course, they were all broken, but it was the easiest thing in the world to imagine that they were whole. There was a piece of a plate with a spray of red and yellow ivy on it that was especially beautiful. They kept it in the parlor, and they had the fairy glass there, too. The fairy glass was as lovely as a dream. Diana found it out in the woods behind their chicken house. It was all full of rainbows, just little young rainbows that hadn't grown big yet, and Diana's mother told her it was broken off a hanging lamp they once had. But it was nice to imagine the fairies lost it one night when they had a ball, so they called it the fairy glass. Matthew was going to make them a table. Oh, they had named that little round pool over in Mr. Barry's field Willowmere. She got that name out of the book Diana lent her. That was a thrilling book, Marilla. The heroine had 5 lovers. Anne would be satisfied with one. The heroine was very handsome, and she went through great tribulations. She could faint as easy as anything. Anne would love to be able to faint. It was so romantic. But she was really very healthy for all she was so thin. She believed she was getting fatter, though. She looked at her elbows every morning when she got up to see if any dimples were coming. Diana was having a new dress made with elbow sleeves. She was going to wear it to the picnic. Oh, she did hope it would be fine next Wednesday. She didn't feel that she could endure the disappointment if anything happened to prevent her from getting to the picnic. She supposed she'd live through it, but she was certain it would be a lifelong sorrow. It wouldn't. In this quiet pause, let the story rest here. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw unclench. Matter if she got to 100 picnics in after years. They wouldn't make up for missing this one. They were going to have boats on the lake of shining waters and ice cream. She had never tasted ice cream. Diana tried to explain what it was like, but Anne guessed ice cream was one of those things that were beyond imagination. Marilla told her she had talked even on for 10 minutes by the clock, and asked her, just for curiosity's sake, to see if she could hold her tongue for the same length of time. Anne held her tongue as desired. But for the rest of the week, she talked picnic and thought picnic and dreamed picnic. On Saturday it rained, and she worked herself up into such a frantic state, lest it should keep on raining, until and over Wednesday that Marilla made her sew an extra patchwork square by way of steadying her nerves. On Sunday, Anne confided to Marilla, on the way home from church, that she grew actually cold all over with excitement when the minister announced the picnic from the pulpit. "Such a thrill as went up and down my back, Marilla. I don't think I'd ever really believed until then that there was honestly going to be a picnic. I couldn't help fearing I'd only imagined it. But when a minister says a thing in the pulpit, you just have to believe it." "You set your heart too much on things, Anne," said Marilla with a sigh. "I'm afraid there'll be a great many disappointments in store for you through life." "Oh, Marilla, looking forward to things is half the pleasure of them," exclaimed Anne. "You mayn't get the things themselves, but nothing can prevent you from having the fun of looking forward to them. Mrs. Lynde says, 'Blessed are they who expect nothing, for they shall not be disappointed.' But I think it would be worse to expect nothing than to be disappointed." Marilla wore her amethyst brooch to church that day as usual. She always wore it to church. She would have thought it rather sacrilegious to leave it off, as bad as forgetting her Bible or her collection dime. That amethyst brooch was Marilla's most treasured possession. A seafaring uncle had given it to her mother, who in turn had bequeathed it to Marilla. It was an old-fashioned oval, containing a braid of her mother's hair, surrounded by a border of very fine amethysts. Marilla knew too little about precious stones to realize how fine the amethysts actually were. But she thought them very beautiful, and was always pleasantly conscious of their violet shimmer at her throat, above her good brown satin dress, even although she could not see it. Anne had been smitten with delighted admiration when she first saw that brooch. She said, "Oh, Marilla, it's a perfectly elegant brooch. I don't know how you can pay attention to the sermon or the prayers when you have it on." "I couldn't, I know. I think amethysts are just sweet. They are what I used to think diamonds were like. Long ago, before I had ever seen a diamond, I read about them and I tried to imagine what they would be like. I thought they would be lovely, glimmering purple stones. When I saw a real diamond in a lady's ring one day, I was so disappointed I cried. Of course, it was very lovely, but it wasn't my idea of a diamond. Will you let me hold the brooch for 1 minute, Marilla? Do you think amethysts can be the souls of good violets?" And so the week went on, full of anticipation. But on the Monday evening before the picnic, Marilla came down from her room with a troubled face. Anne was shelling peas by the spotless table, singing Nellie of the Hazel Dell with a vigor and expression that did credit to Diana's teaching. And Marilla said, "Anne, did you see anything of my amethyst brooch? I thought I stuck it in my pincushion when I came home from church yesterday evening, but I can't find it anywhere." Anne answered, a little slowly, that she had seen it that afternoon when Marilla was away at the Aid Society. She was passing Marilla's door when she saw it on the cushion, so she went in to look at it. "Did you touch it?" said Marilla sternly. "Why, yes," admitted Anne. "I took it up and I pinned it on my breast just to see how it would look." Marilla said she had no business to do anything of the sort, that it was very wrong in a little girl to meddle, that she shouldn't have gone into Marilla's room in the first place, and that she shouldn't have touched a brooch that didn't belong to her in the second. Then she asked, "Where did you put it?" "Oh, I put it back on the bureau. I hadn't it on a minute. Truly, I didn't mean to meddle, Marilla. I didn't think about its being wrong to go in and try on the brooch, but I see now that it was, and I'll never do it again. That's one good thing about me. I never do the same naughty thing twice." "You didn't put it back," said Marilla. "That brooch isn't anywhere on the bureau. You've taken it out or something, Anne." "I did put it back," said Anne quickly, pertly, Marilla thought. I don't just remember whether I stuck it on the pincushion or laid it in the china tray, but I'm perfectly certain I put it back." Marilla determined to be just and said she would go and have another look. "If you put that brooch back, it's there still. If it is, I'll know you didn't, that's all." She went to her room and made a thorough search, not only over the bureau, but in every other place she thought the brooch might possibly be. It was not to be found, and she returned to the kitchen. "Anne, the brooch is gone. By your own admission, you were the last person to handle it. Now, what have you done with it? Tell me the truth at once. Did you take it out and lose it?" "No, I didn't," said Anne solemnly, meeting Marilla's angry gaze squarely. "I never took the brooch out of your room, and that is the truth if I was to be led to the block for it, although I'm not very certain what a block is. So there, Marilla." Anne's "so there" was only intended to emphasize her assertion, but Marilla took it as a display of defiance. She said sharply, "I believe you are telling me a falsehood, Anne. I know you are. There now, don't say anything more unless you are prepared to tell the whole truth. Go to your room and stay there until you are ready to confess." Anne asked meekly if she should take the peas with her, but Marilla said no. She would finish shelling them herself, and to do as she was bid. When Anne had gone, Marilla went about her evening tasks in a very disturbed state of mind. She was worried about her valuable brooch. What if Anne had lost it? And how wicked of the child to deny having taken it when anybody could see she must have. With such an innocent face, too. "I don't know what I wouldn't sooner have had happen," thought Marilla. "In this quiet pause, let the story rest here. Picture a still lake at dusk, its surface smooth as glass. Feel your eyelids grow wonderfully heavy, soft as petals falling. Gently now back to Anne," as she nervously shelled the peas. "Of course, I don't suppose she meant to steal it or anything like that. She's just taken it to play with or help along that imagination of hers. She must have taken it, that's clear, for there hasn't been a soul in that room since she was in it, by her own story, until I went up tonight. And the brooch is gone, there's nothing surer. I suppose she has lost it and is afraid to own up for fear she'll be punished. It's a dreadful thing to think she tells falsehoods. It's a far worse thing than her fit of temper. It's a fearful responsibility to have a child in your house you can't trust. Slyness and untruthfulness, that's what she has displayed. I declare I feel worse about that than about the brooch. If she'd only have told the truth about it, I wouldn't mind so much." All through the evening, at intervals, Marilla went to her room and searched for the brooch, without finding it. A bedtime visit to the east gable produced no result. Anne persisted in denying that she knew anything about the brooch, but Marilla was only the more firmly convinced that she did. She told Matthew the story the next morning. Matthew was confounded and puzzled. He could not so quickly lose faith in Anne, but he had to admit that circumstances were against her. "You're sure it hasn't fell down behind the bureau?" was the only suggestion he could offer. "I've moved the bureau and I've taken out the drawers and I've looked in every crack and cranny," was Marilla's positive answer. "The brooch is gone and that child has taken it and lied about it. That's the plain, ugly truth, Matthew Cuthbert, and we might as well look it in the face." "Well now, what are you going to do about it?" Matthew asked forlornly, feeling secretly thankful that Marilla and not he had to deal with the situation. He felt no desire to put his oar in this time. "She'll stay in her room until she confesses," said Marilla grimly, remembering the success of this method in the former case. "Then we'll see. Perhaps we'll be able to find the brooch if she'll only tell where she took it, but in any case, she'll have to be severely punished, Matthew." "Well now, you'll have to punish her," said Matthew, reaching for his hat. "I've nothing to do with it, remember. You warned me off yourself." Marilla felt deserted by everyone. She could not even go to Mrs. Lynde for advice. She went up to the east gable with a very serious face and left it with a face more serious still. Anne steadfastly refused to confess. She persisted in asserting that she had not taken the brooch. The child had evidently been crying, and Marilla felt a pang of pity which she sternly repressed. By night she was, as she expressed it, beat out. "You'll stay in this room until you confess, Anne. You can make up your mind to that," she said firmly. "But the picnic is tomorrow, Marilla," cried Anne. "You won't keep me from going to that, will you? You'll just let me out for the afternoon, won't you? Then I'll stay here as long as you like afterwards cheerfully. But I must go to the picnic." "You'll not go to picnics, nor anywhere else, until you've confessed, Anne." "Oh, Marilla," gasped Anne. But Marilla had gone out and shut the door. Wednesday morning dawned as bright and fair as if expressly made to order for the picnic. Birds sang around Green Gables. The Madonna lilies in the garden sent out whiffs of perfume that entered in on viewless winds at every door and window, and wandered through halls and rooms like spirits of benediction. The birches in the hollow waved joyful hands as if watching for Anne's usual morning greeting from the east gable. But Anne was not at her window. When Marilla took her breakfast up to her, she found the child sitting primly on her bed, pale and resolute, with tight-shut lips and gleaming eyes. "Marilla, I'm ready to confess." "Ah," Marilla laid down her tray. Once again her method had succeeded, but her success was very bitter to her. "Let me hear what you have to say then, Anne." "I took the amethyst brooch," said Anne, as if repeating a lesson she had learned. "I took it just as you said. I didn't mean to take it when I went in. But it did look so beautiful, Marilla, when I pinned it on my breast that I was overcome by an irresistible temptation. I imagined how perfectly thrilling it would be to take it to Idlewild and play I was the Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald. It would be so much easier to imagine I was the Lady Cordelia if I had a real amethyst brooch on. Diana and I make necklaces of roseberries, but what are roseberries compared to amethysts? So I took the brooch. I thought I could put it back before you came home. I went all the way around by the road to lengthen out the time. When I was going over the bridge across the lake of shining waters, I took the brooch off to have another look at it. Oh, how it did shine in the sunlight. And then, when I was leaning over the bridge, it just slipped through my fingers. So, and went down, 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 all purplely sparkling, and sank forevermore beneath the lake of shining waters. And that's the best I can do at confessing, Marilla." Marilla felt hot anger surge up into her heart again. This child had taken and lost her treasured amethyst brooch, and now sat there calmly reciting the details thereof, without the least apparent compunction or repentance. "Anne, this is terrible," she said, trying to speak calmly. "You are the very wickedest girl I ever heard of." "Yes, I suppose I am," agreed Anne tranquilly. "And I know I'll have to be punished. It'll be your duty to punish me, Marilla. Won't you please get it over right off, because I'd like to go to the picnic with nothing on my mind." "Picnic, indeed. You'll go to no picnic today, Anne Shirley. That shall be your punishment. And it isn't half severe enough either for what you've done." "Not go to the picnic?" Anne sprang to her feet and clutched Marilla's hand. "But you promised me I might. Oh, Marilla, I must go to the picnic. That was why I confessed. Punish me any way you like but that. Oh, Marilla, please, please, let me go to the picnic. Think of the ice cream. For anything you know, I may never have a chance to taste ice cream again." Marilla disengaged Anne's clinging hands stonily. You needn't plead, Anne. You are not going to the picnic, and that's final. No, not a word. Anne realized that Marilla was not to be moved. She clasped her hands together, gave a piercing shriek, and then flung herself face downward on the bed, crying and writhing in an utter abandonment of disappointment and despair. In this quiet pause, let the story rest here. With every slow breath, feel yourself drift deeper as each gentle moment carries you further down towards soft, peaceful sleep. Gently now, back to Anne. For the land's sake, gasped Marilla, hastening from the room. I believe the child is crazy. No child in her senses would behave as she does. If she isn't, she's utterly bad. Oh dear, I'm afraid Rachel was right from the first. But I've put my hand to the plow and I won't look back. That was a dismal morning. Marilla worked fiercely and scrubbed the porch floor and the dairy shelves when she could find nothing else to do. Neither the shelves nor the porch needed it, but Marilla did. Then she went out and raked the yard. When dinner was ready, she went to the stairs and called Anne. A tear-stained face appeared, looking tragically over the banisters. Come down to your dinner, Anne. I don't want any dinner, Marilla, said Anne sobbingly. I couldn't eat anything. My heart is broken. You'll feel remorse of conscience someday, I expect, for breaking it, Marilla, but I forgive you. Remember when the time comes that I forgive you. But please don't ask me to eat anything, especially boiled pork and greens. Boiled pork and greens are so unromantic when one is in affliction. Exasperated, Marilla returned to the kitchen and poured out her tale of woe to Matthew, who, between his sense of justice and his unlawful sympathy with Anne, was a miserable man. Well now, she shouldn't have taken the brooch, Marilla, or told stories about it, he admitted, mournfully surveying his plateful of unromantic pork and greens as if he, like Anne, thought it a food unsuited to crises of feeling. But she's such a little thing, such an interesting little thing. Don't you think it's pretty rough not to let her go to the picnic when she's so set on it? Matthew Cuthbert, I'm amazed at you. I think I've let her off entirely too easy. And she doesn't appear to realize how wicked she's been at all. That's what worries me most. If she'd really felt sorry, it wouldn't be so bad. And you don't seem to realize it, neither. You're making excuses for her all the time to yourself. I can see that. Well now, she's such a little thing, feebly reiterated Matthew. And there should be allowances made, Marilla. You know she's never had any bringing up. Well, she's having it now, retorted Marilla. The retort silenced Matthew if it did not convince him. That dinner was a very dismal meal. The only cheerful thing about it was Jerry Buote, the hired boy, and Marilla resented his cheerfulness as a personal insult. When her dishes were washed and her bread sponge set and her hens fed, Marilla remembered that she had noticed a small rent in her best black lace shawl when she had taken it off on Monday afternoon on returning from the ladies' aid. She would go and mend it. The shawl was in a box in her trunk. As Marilla lifted it out, the sunlight, falling through the vines that clustered thickly about the window, struck upon something caught in the shawl, something that glittered and sparkled in facets of violet light. Marilla snatched at it with a gasp. It was the amethyst brooch, hanging to a thread of the lace by its catch. "Dear life and heart," said Marilla blankly, "what does this mean? Here's my brooch safe, and sound that I thought was at the bottom of Barry's pond. Whatever did that girl mean by saying she took it and lost it? I declare I believe Green Gables is bewitched. I remember now that when I took off my shawl Monday afternoon, I laid it on the bureau for a minute. I suppose the brooch got caught in it somehow. Well." Marilla betook herself to the east gable, brooch in hand. Anne had cried herself out and was sitting dejectedly by the window. "Anne Shirley," said Marilla solemnly, "I've just found my brooch hanging to my black lace shawl. Now I want to know what that rigmarole you told me this morning meant." "Why, you said you'd keep me here until I confessed," returned Anne wearily. "And so I decided to confess because I was bound to get to the picnic. I thought out a confession last night after I went to bed and made it as interesting as I could. And I said it over and over so that I wouldn't forget it. But you wouldn't let me go to the picnic after all, so all my trouble was wasted." Marilla had to laugh in spite of herself, but her conscience pricked her. "Anne, you do beat all, but I was wrong, I see that now. I shouldn't have doubted your word when I'd never known you to tell a story. Of course, it wasn't right for you to confess to a thing you hadn't done. It was very wrong to do so. But I drove you to it. So if you'll forgive me, Anne, I'll forgive you and we'll start square again. And now get yourself ready for the picnic." Anne flew up like a rocket. "Oh, Marilla, isn't it too late?" "No, it's only 2 o'clock. They won't be more than well gathered yet, and it'll be an hour before they have tea. Wash your face and comb your hair and put on your gingham. I'll fill a basket for you. There's plenty of stuff baked in the house. And I'll get Jerry to hitch up the sorrel and drive you down to the picnic ground." "Oh, Marilla," exclaimed Anne, flying to the washstand. "5 minutes ago I was so miserable I was wishing I'd never been born, and now I wouldn't change places with an angel." That night, a thoroughly happy, completely tired-out Anne returned to Green Gables in a state of beatification impossible to describe. "Oh, Marilla, I've had a perfectly scrumptious time." Scrumptious is a new word I learned today. I heard Mary Alice Bell use it. Isn't it very expressive? Everything was lovely. We had a splendid tea, and then Mr. Harmon Andrews took us all for a row on the Lake of Shining Waters, 6 of us at a time. And Jane Andrews nearly fell overboard. She was leaning out to pick water lilies, and if Mr. Andrews hadn't caught her by her sash just in the nick of time, she'd fallen in and probably been drowned. I wish it had been me. It would have been such a romantic experience to have been nearly drowned. It would be such a thrilling tale to tell. And we had the ice cream. Words fail me to describe that ice cream. Marilla, I assure you it was sublime. That evening, Marilla told the whole story to Matthew over her stocking basket. "I'm willing to own up that I made a mistake," she concluded candidly, "but I've learned a lesson. I have to laugh when I think of Anne's confession, although I suppose I shouldn't, for it really was a falsehood. But it doesn't seem as bad as the other would have been, somehow, and anyhow I'm responsible for it. That child is hard to understand in some respects, but I believe she'll turn out all right yet. And there's one thing certain, no house will ever be dull that she's in." And so, like every tale we've shared, this one, too, finds its quiet end. The journey is complete, and now your mind may lay its burden down, just as our weary travelers have found their rest. May your breath slow, your shoulders soften, and your thoughts drift to that peaceful shore where sleep awaits. Sleep well, dear one, and dream gently. If this story brought you comfort, consider sharing it with someone whose nights grow long, and let us meet again here, beneath the calm of another evening's telling. Good night.